My son sent me a text on the eve of his wedding that shattered my heart and then sealed his fate. Dad, do not come tomorrow. Monica says your blue-collar vibe will embarrass her family. I did not reply. I did not call. I simply opened my laptop and clicked one button that turned their dream wedding into a nightmare. If you have ever been underestimated by the very people you sacrificed everything for, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you would have done what I did. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a tin of shoe polish and an old rag. The smell of wax and leather filled the room, mixing with the faint scent of sawdust that never really leaves a man like me. It was a Friday night in my small house in the suburbs of Chicago. The house is paid off. It is quiet. It is empty since my wife Catherine passed away 5 years ago. On the back of the kitchen door hung my charcoal suit. It was 10 years old, but I had it dry cleaned just for tomorrow. My son Jason was getting married. I am 66 years old and my name is Bernie Kowalski. I rubbed the cloth in small circles over the toe of my dress shoe. I wanted to look presentable. I am a retired contractor. I spent 40 years of my life with cracked hands and a sore back, pouring concrete and framing houses so that my son would never have to. I wanted him to have the soft hands of a man who signs checks, not the rough hands of a man who cashes them, and I succeeded. Jason is 28. He wears suits that cost more than my first car. He drives a BMW that I pay for, though he tells his friends he bought it with his bonus. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 7 clean in the evening. I was expecting a call, maybe a little excitement, maybe a thank you. I had transferred $85,000 to the wedding venue, the Grand Plaza, just 48 hours ago. It was the deposit and the final payment all in one. Monica. My future daughter-in-law had insisted on the Grand Plaza. She said it was the only place that met her standards. My phone buzzed on the table. The vibration rattled against the oak wood. I wiped my hands on a paper towel and picked it up. A smile touched my face. It was a text from Jason. I put on my reading glasses. I read the message. Then I read it again. Then I took my glasses off and cleaned them and put them back on and read it a third time. Dad, I am so sorry. But Monica is really stressed. She says having you there will make her anxious. Her family is very high society from New York. And well, you are a bit too working class. They are uncomfortable around people who look like they labor. It is better if you do not come. I will send you photos. Love, Jason. I stared at the phone until the screen went black. The silence in the kitchen was sudden and absolute. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Too working class. The words echoed in my head. I looked at my hands. They are calloused. I have a scar on my left thumb from a table saw accident in '98. I have a permanent tan on my neck from working under the summer sun. These hands built the foundation of the house Jason grew up in. These hands changed his diapers when Catherine was sick. These hands signed the checks for his private school and his college tuition. And these hands signed the check for $85,000 yesterday. I did not feel anger at first. I felt a cold, heavy stone settle in my stomach. It was the feeling of a man who realizes he has been building a house on a sinkhole for 28 years. Jason did not even have the courage to call me. He sent a text. He dismissed his father, the man who had been his only parent for the last 5 years, with a text message. Monica. I thought of her. She is 26. She acts like a princess. She told Jason she comes from old money. She speaks with a fake accent she picked up from watching television. She treats waiters like servants. And Jason just follows her like a puppy. He is weak. I raised him to be kind, but somewhere along the way, kindness turned into weakness. I stood up. My knees popped. I walked to the refrigerator and took out a bottle of beer, but then I put it back. This moment required something stronger. I went to the cabinet and poured 3 fingers of whiskey into a glass. I drank it in one swallow. The burn woke me up. I looked at the suit hanging on the door. It looked like a costume now. A costume for a clown who thought he was part of the family. I walked over to it. I took the hanger off the hook. I walked to the hall closet and hung it in the very back behind my winter coats. I would not be needing a suit tomorrow. I walked back to the kitchen table. I picked up my phone, I hovered my thumb over the call button. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him how he could do this, but then I stopped. What was the point? If I had to beg my son to want me at his wedding, then I had already lost. Dignity is the only thing a man has when he is alone. I would not give them the satisfaction of hearing me cry. I would not give them the satisfaction of hearing me yell. I sat down at my desk in the corner of the living room. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dim light. I logged into my bank account. Most people look at me and see an old man in a flannel shirt driving a Ford F-150 with rust on the bumper. They see a man who cuts his own grass. They see a man who clips coupons for coffee. They do not know who I am. They do not know that 30 years ago, I started a construction supply company. They do not know that I bought land when it was cheap and sold it when it was gold. They do not know that I own 3 apartment complexes in the city and a commercial warehouse district. I retired 5 years ago, but my money did not. Jason thinks I live on a pension and Social Security. He thinks the credit card I gave him has a $5,000 limit and that I struggle to pay it. He thinks the $85,000 for the wedding was my entire life savings. He thinks he is draining me dry and that I am too stupid to notice because I love him. He is wrong. I clicked on the transaction history. I wanted to see exactly what my working-class money had bought them this week. The list was long. It was disgusting. $4,000 at Serenity Spa. That was 2 days ago. Monica and her mother must have gotten the platinum package. I have not spent $4,000 on myself in the last 4 years. $12,000 to Delta Airlines. First-class tickets from New York. For Monica's parents. Jason told me they were wealthy. If they are so wealthy, why am I paying for their flights? Why am I paying for them to come and look down on me? $3,000 at the Velvet Room. That was last night. The rehearsal dinner. I was not invited to the rehearsal dinner either. Jason told me it was just for the bridal party. But looking at the bill, I see charges for 20 people. 20 people eating steak and lobster on my dime, while I ate a ham sandwich in my kitchen. I scrolled down. $500 for a limousine service. Pickup scheduled for tomorrow morning at the airport. That must be for the wealthy parents who cannot afford their own ride. And then the big one, pending. $85,000. The Grand Plaza. I stared at that number. That was a college education. That was a house in some parts of the country. That was the blood and sweat of my life. And they were using it to throw a party where I was not welcome. I looked at the date. I initiated the transfer yesterday morning. It was an ACH transfer. Most people think these are instant. They are not. They take time to clear. There is a window, a small window, where the sender can revoke the authorization if there is an error or fraud. And this was fraud. It was a fraud of the heart. I moved the mouse cursor. My hand was steady. I was a sniper taking aim. I clicked on the $85,000 transaction. A menu popped up. I selected Dispute Transaction. The bank website asked for a reason. I typed in one word, unauthorized. It was not a lie. I authorized payment for my son's wedding. I did not authorize payment for a social event where I was banned. The contract between a father and son had been breached. I clicked Submit. The screen refreshed. Transaction canceled. The money would not leave my account. The Grand Plaza would get a notification in the morning that the funds had failed. I was not done. I went to the credit card tab. This was the card Jason carried in his wallet. The card he used to impress Monica. The card he used to buy her love. I looked at the balance. He had racked up $20,000 in the last month alone. Flowers, suits, jewelry. I clicked on Manage Authorized Users. I saw his name. Jason Kowalski. There was a toggle switch next to his name that said Active. I clicked it. The status changed to Inactive. But I wanted to be sure. I wanted to be absolutely sure that when he tried to swipe that card tomorrow to pay for the flowers or the makeup artist or the final bar tab, that it would be a brick of useless plastic. I clicked Report Lost or Stolen. The site asked if I wanted to order a replacement card. I clicked No. I leaned back in my chair. The room was silent, but inside my head I could hear the sound of a guillotine dropping. I closed the browser tab for the bank. Then I opened my email. I had an email from the landlord of the house on Oak Street. "This is the house Jason and Monica live in. They think they rent it from a property management company. They do not know that I own the house. I bought it through an LLC 3 years ago so they would have a nice place to live. I have been subsidizing their rent. They pay $1,000 a month. The market rate is $3,000. I pay the difference from one pocket to the other to keep the books balanced." I wrote an email to the property manager. His name is Sullivan. He is also my lawyer and my old friend. Subject: Eviction Notice. Sullivan, prepare a 30-day notice for the tenants on Oak Street. Also, I am raising the rent to market value effective immediately for any lease renewal. No exceptions. Send it tomorrow morning. Bernie. I clicked send. It was done. In the span of 10 minutes, I had dismantled the financial fantasy my son lived in. I closed the laptop. I felt a strange sensation. I thought I would feel guilty. A father should protect his child, but a father should also teach his child. And I had failed to teach Jason gratitude. I had failed to teach him respect. So now life would have to teach him, and life is a cruel teacher. I walked back to the kitchen. I washed my whiskey glass and put it in the drying rack. I put the shoe polish away under the sink. My phone started to buzz again. I walked over to it. It was Jason calling. He must have been at a bar or a club, maybe celebrating his last night of freedom. Or maybe his card had just been declined for a round of drinks. The screen lit up with his face. A picture of us from a fishing trip 5 years ago. He was smiling. I was smiling. We looked like a team. I watched the phone vibrate against the table. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It stopped. Then a text came in. "Dad, call me back. My card is not working." I stared at the text. He did not ask if I was okay. He did not apologize for the earlier text banning me from the wedding. He only contacted me because his access to my money was cut off. That was all I needed to see. I held the power button on the side of the phone. I held it down until the screen went black and the little spinning wheel disappeared. I turned off the kitchen light. I walked down the hallway to my bedroom. I passed the photos on the wall. Photos of Catherine. Photos of Jason graduating. Photos of the life I thought I had. I lay down on my bed. The sheets were cool. I pulled the blanket up to my chin. Tomorrow was going to be a very bad day for Jason Kowalski. Tomorrow he was going to wake up and put on a tuxedo that he probably hadn't fully paid for yet. He was going to go to a venue that was expecting an $85 Calzone check that was never coming. He was going to stand in front of his high society in-laws with a frozen credit card and a lie that was about to explode in his face, and I would not be there to fix it. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 28 years, I did not worry about my son. I did not worry about his future. I had done everything I could. I drifted off to sleep listening to the sound of the wind outside. It sounded like a storm was coming, and it was. But for the first time, the storm was not hitting my house. It was hitting his. The sun was just beginning to burn off the morning mist that clung to the manicured lawns of my neighborhood. It was 7:00 in the morning on the day my son was supposed to get married. Most fathers would be tying a Windsor knot, or checking their watch, or maybe nursing a coffee while thinking about the speech they were going to give. I was out in my front yard pulling the starter cord on my 20-year-old Toro lawnmower. The engine sputtered and then roared to life, a loud mechanical growl that shattered the suburban silence. I loved that sound. It was the sound of work. It was the sound of reliability. That machine had never let me down. Unlike the people who were about to show up, I adjusted my hat, pulling the brim low over my eyes, and started pushing the mower across the grass. I could smell the gasoline and the sweet, sharp scent of cut clover. It was grounding. It reminded me of who I was. I was Bernie Kowalski. I built things. I fixed things. And today, I was going to tear something down. I was halfway through the second row when I heard the screech. It was the distinct sound of high-performance rubber being tortured against asphalt. I didn't look up immediately. I kept my pace steady, pushing the mower, feeling the vibration in my hands. But I knew that sound. I knew the engine note that followed it. It was a BMW M5, a machine of precision engineering that cost north of $100,000. I knew exactly how much it cost, because I was the one who wrote the check for it 2 years ago, when Jason said he needed a reliable car for client meetings. The black sedan drifted around the corner, way too fast for a residential street, and slammed on the brakes right in front of my driveway. The tires smoked, leaving thick, black skid marks on the pavement I had sealed myself last summer. I stopped the mower. I didn't turn it off. I just let it idle, the engine chugging rhythmically, while I leaned against the handle and waited. The driver's door flew open. Jason scrambled out. He looked like a wreck. His hair was unwashed, sticking up in tufts, and he was wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and sweatpants. He looked nothing like a man about to marry into high society. He looked like a boy who had lost his mother at the grocery store. Then the passenger door opened. Monica stepped out. She was wearing a pink velour tracksuit that probably cost more than my lawnmower and huge sunglasses that covered half her face. She slammed the door so hard the car rocked on its suspension. That made my jaw tighten. You don't slam the door of a car you don't own. "Bernie!" she screamed. Her voice was shrill, cutting through the rumble of the lawnmower. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I reached down and flipped the switch on the mower. The engine died. The sudden silence was heavy. I took a slow breath, inhaling the gasoline fumes one last time before facing them. I grabbed a rag from my back pocket and wiped the sweat from my forehead. I didn't say a word. I just looked at them. Jason ran up the driveway, his loafers slipping on the loose grass clippings. "Dad," he panted, stopping a few feet away from me. "Dad, you have to pick up the phone. Why is your phone off? Do you have any idea what is happening?" I looked at him calmly. "I am cutting the grass, Jason. I like to focus when I work." Monica marched up behind him. She didn't look at me. She looked at her phone, typing furiously with manicured nails before shoving the screen toward my face. "Declined," she hissed. "Declined. Do you know what that word means, Bernie? I was at the salon. I was in the chair. They had just finished the extensions. My hair was wet, and when I gave them the card, the machine beeped. It beeped loud. Everyone looked. The stylist, the other customers, everyone. She took a step closer, invading my personal space. She smelled of expensive chemicals and desperation. It said stolen. She whispered the word like it was a curse. The machine said the card was reported stolen. They thought I was a thief. They threatened to call the police, Bernie. I had to call my father to pay over the phone. My father, on my wedding day. I folded the rag and put it back in my pocket. "That sounds embarrassing," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of sympathy. "Embarrassing?" she shrieked. "It was humiliating. You need to call the bank right now. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you are an idiot who pressed the wrong button. Fix this." Jason stepped between us, putting his hands up in a placating gesture. "Dad, please. We don't have time for this. The florist is waiting for the final payment. The limousine company needs the deposit for the pickup. We have so many vendors to pay this morning. Just unlock the card. We can talk about whatever is bothering you later after the wedding." Whatever is bothering me. The phrase hung in the air. He thought this was a mood. He thought this was a senior moment. He didn't even realize the ground had shifted beneath his feet. I looked at my son. I looked at the panic in his eyes. It wasn't the panic of a man worried about his father. It was the panic of an addict cut off from his supply. "I am not calling the bank," I said. Jason blinked. "What?" I said, "I am not calling the bank. The card wasn't declined by mistake, Jason. I reported it stolen." Monica let out a sound that was half laugh, half growl. "You what? Why would you do that?" "Because I realized something last night," I said, crossing my arms over my chest. "I realized that only a thief would take $85,000 from a man and then tell him he isn't good enough to eat at the same table." Jason's face went pale. He finally understood. This wasn't a glitch. This was a response. "Dad, come on," he stammered, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You got the text. Look, I am sorry, okay? It is complicated. Monica's family is different. They have expectations. We just wanted the day to be perfect. We didn't want you to feel out of place." "Out of place?" I repeated. "You are standing in the driveway of the house I built. You are driving the car I bought. You are wearing clothes I paid for. And you think I am the one who is out of place? Monica scoffed, rolling her eyes behind her dark glasses. Oh, here we go. The martyr act. Listen, Bernie. We don't have time for your little blue-collar pity party. We have guests, arriving from the Hamptons. We have a schedule. You are ruining everything because your fragile ego got bruised. Just give us the money and go back to your gardening. You are right. You don't fit in with my family. Look at you. You are covered in grass. You look like the help. The help. I looked down at my boots. They were old work boots stained with oil and mud. I looked at my flannel shirt. It was faded at the elbows. Then I looked past them at the BMW sitting in the street. That car was my pride and joy when I bought it. I had worked an extra 6 months of consulting jobs just to pay cash for it, so Jason wouldn't have a car payment hanging over his head. I put the title in my name for insurance purposes, but I let him drive it as if it were his own. I let him pretend he was the big shot. You know, Monica, I said, my voice dropping an octave, you are right. I am just the help. I am the help that pays for your apartment. I am the help that pays for your vacations. And I am the help that pays for that car you just slammed the door of. I walked past them down the driveway toward the street. Where are you going? Jason asked, his voice rising in pitch. Dad, where are you going? I walked up to the BMW. I ran my hand along the hood. The metal was hot from the engine. I looked at the tires, Michelin pilots, $500 a corner. I paid for those, too. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my key. I had a spare key for every vehicle I owned. I pressed the unlock button. The lights flashed. I opened the driver's door. Dad, what are you doing? Jason yelled, running toward me. We need that car. We have to pick up the groomsmen in an hour. I sat in the driver's seat. The leather was soft. It smelled like Jason's cologne and Monica's perfume. It smelled like entitlement. I started the engine. The dashboard lit up. Get out of the car. Bernie, Monica screamed, running down the driveway, her heels clicking frantically on the concrete. That is our car. You can't take our car. I rolled down the window as they reached me. I looked at Jason. He was gripping the door handle, his knuckles white. It is not your car, Jason, I said. It never was. It is my car. My name is on the title. My name is on the insurance. And since I am not invited to the wedding, I don't see why my car should be invited either. Dad, you can't do this, Jason pleaded, tears welling up in his eyes. How are we supposed to get to the venue? How are we supposed to get around? I don't know, I said, shifting the car into gear. Maybe you can call Monica's wealthy father. I am sure he has a spare limousine lying around. Or maybe you can take the bus. It is very affordable, very blue-collar. I didn't wait for a response. I stepped on the gas. The car surged forward, leaving them standing in the street. I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw Jason standing there with his arms hanging by his sides, looking lost. I saw Monica throwing her hands in the air, screaming at the empty space where the car used to be. I drove the BMW around the block and parked it in my garage. I closed the garage door. Then I went back inside my house and locked the front door. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a cup of coffee. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I had fired the first shot, but the war was far from over. I sat down at the table and looked at my phone. It was buzzing again. This time it wasn't Jason. It was the landline. I let it ring. I knew what was coming next. They would try to go back to their apartment. They would try to regroup. They would try to find anything they could sell to get quick cash. They were heading to the house on Oak Street, and they had no idea that the locks on that house were being changed in exactly 20 minutes. I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter, just the way I like it. This was going to be a very long day. But for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to it. They wanted a show. They wanted a perfect high society wedding. Well, I was going to give them a show they would never forget. I was going to show them exactly what happens when the help decides to quit. The phone stopped ringing. The silence returned, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a fuse burning down, and the explosion was going to be spectacular. I stood up and walked to the window. I watched them walking down the street away from my house. They were arguing. Monica was shoving Jason. Jason was trying to grab her arm. They looked small from here, small and petty and weak. They were walking toward the bus stop. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. But then I remembered the text message. Don't come. You are too working class. I turned away from the window. I had work to do. I had a wedding to crash. And I needed to make sure my suit was pressed. Because if I was going to be the villain in their story, Tuck was going to be the best-dressed villain they had ever seen. I walked to the closet and pulled out the charcoal suit. I laid it on the bed. I ran my hand over the fabric. It was good quality, durable, just like me. The game had changed, and they didn't even know the rules yet. I stood in my kitchen listening to the silence of the house, but it did not last long. The pounding started on the front door, less than 10 minutes after I had taken the BMW back. It was a rhythmic, desperate thudding that shook the frame. They had not walked to the bus stop after all. They had come back. They had realized that without me, they were stranded in a suburb with no money, no car, and a clock that was ticking down to a social disaster. I finished my coffee. I placed the mug in the sink. I walked slowly to the door. I did not hurry. I was done hurrying for people who would not cross the street to help me. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Jason was standing there, his chest heaving, his face slick with sweat. Monica was behind him, her arms crossed, her expensive tracksuit looking ridiculous against the peeling paint of my porch railing. She looked like an angry flamingo in a coal mine. "You have to stop this, Dad," Jason said, his voice cracking. "You are taking this too far. It was just a text. It was just a request. We didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but you are acting like a lunatic. Give us the keys. Turn the cards back on. We have an hour before the ceremony starts." I leaned against the door frame, blocking the entrance. I looked at my son. He was 28 years old, but in that moment, he looked like a toddler throwing a tantrum in a toy store. "I am not acting like a lunatic, Jason," I said, my voice calm and low. "I am acting like a man who just saved $85,000. Monica stepped forward, pushing Jason aside. Her face was twisted into a sneer that exposed the lines of filler around her mouth. "Listen to me, you selfish old man," she spat. "You think this is a game? You think you can hold us hostage? You are pathetic. This is my wedding, my day, and you are ruining it because you are too sensitive to handle the truth." "And what is the truth, Monica?" I asked. "The truth is that you are an embarrassment," she screamed. "Look at you. Look at this house. It smells like old grease and sawdust. You wear clothes from a thrift store. You drive a truck that belongs in a junkyard. My parents are sophisticated people. They are flying in from New York. They run in circles you couldn't even dream of getting into. Do you really think I want them to see you standing next to us in photos? Do you think I want to explain to my friends that my father-in-law digs ditches for a living?" I stood there and let her words hit me. They were meant to hurt. They were meant to cut me down. But they didn't hurt. They just clarified things. They stripped away the last layer of doubt. "I don't dig ditches, Monica," I said. "I own the company that digs the ditches, and the company that pours the concrete, and the company that builds the walls. But you never cared about that, did you? You only cared about the checkbook. I don't care what you own," she hissed. "You are low-class, Bernie. You always have been. You are cheap. You are tacky. And frankly, we were doing you a favor by inviting you at all. But now you are going to fix this. You are going to give us the money, because you owe it to Jason. You owe him a future." "I owe him nothing," I said. "I gave him a life. I gave him an education. I gave him a home. And in return, he gave me a text message telling me to stay away." Jason tried to intervene. "Mom didn't mean that, Dad. She is just stressed." "Oh, shut up, Jason," Monica snapped at him. "Stop coddling him. He needs to hear this." She turned back to me, her eyes blazing. "You are going to pay for this wedding, Bernie. You are going to pay for every single cent, because if you don't, I will make sure you never see your son again. I will make sure you die alone in this miserable little house." I looked at her. I looked at the greed and the entitlement radiating off her like heat from a pavement. And then I asked the question that had been burning in my mind since last night. "Why?" I asked. "What?" she snapped. "Why should I pay for a party I am not invited to?" She blinked. The question seemed to confuse her. Because it is your duty, she said. Because that is what parents do. They pay. No, I said. Parents provide. Fools pay, and I am done being a fool. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Clear's throat. It was an old model with a cracked screen. Monica looked at it with disdain. What are you doing? She asked. I am making a call, I said. I unlocked the phone. I scrolled through my contacts. I didn't have many, but the ones I had were useful. I found the number for Prestige Limousines. I knew the owner. His name was Tony. We had played poker together for 20 years. I put the phone on speaker and held it up. Monica's eyes widened. She recognized the name. The phone rang once, twice. Bernie Tony's voice boomed through the tiny speaker. Good to hear from you. Everything good for the pickup? Hello, Tony, I said, keeping my eyes locked on Monica's face. I am calling about the reservation for the Kowalski wedding, the stretch Hummer and the 2 town cars for the airport pickup. Yes, sir, Tony said. My drivers are at O'Hare right now. The flight from New York just landed. We are waiting for the party at baggage claim. I saw the color drain from Monica's face. Her parents, her wealthy, sophisticated parents, were walking toward baggage claim right now, expecting a chauffeur with a sign. Tony, I said, there has been a change of plans. What kind of change? Bernie Tony asked. I need you to cancel the service, I said. Cancel it? Tony sounded confused. Bernie, the drivers are already there. The meter is running. I know, Tony, I said. I will pay the cancellation fee. Whatever it is, just put it on my tab. But do not pick up those passengers. Bernie, are you sure? Tony asked. It is a wedding day. I am sure, Tony, I said. The credit card on file for the incidentals was my son's, and it has been reported stolen. And I am withdrawing my personal guarantee for the contract. Send the drivers home. There was a pause on the line. Then Tony sighed. All right, Bernie, you are the boss. I will radio them now to leave the terminal. Sorry about the trouble. No trouble, Tony. Thanks. I hung up the phone. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of a fuse burning. It was the silence of a bomb that had just gone off. Monica let out a sound that was not human. It was a guttural screech of pure panic. You didn't, she whispered, her hands flying to her mouth. You didn't just strand my parents at O'Hare. I put the phone back in my pocket. I did, I said. They are wealthy people, Monica. I am sure they can figure out how to use Uber. Or maybe they can take the Blue Line train. It goes straight to downtown. It is very efficient, very working class. My parents do not take public transportation, she screamed, lunging at me. Jason caught her around the waist, holding her back. She clawed at the air, reaching for my face. You monster! You ruined everything. They are going to be standing on the curb like hobos. They will hate me. They will hate you. They don't even know me, I said. And judging by how you talk about me, they probably already hate me. So I have lost nothing. Jason looked at me with eyes full of betrayal. Dad, how could you? They are guests. This is humiliating. Humiliating? I repeated. Humiliating is sitting in your kitchen polishing your shoes for a wedding you were told not to attend. Humiliating is realizing your son is ashamed of the hands that fed him. This isn't humiliation, Jason. This is education. Education? He shouted. You are destroying my life to teach me a lesson. I am destroying the lie you are living, I said. You wanted to play the big shot, Jason. You wanted to marry the princess. Well, big shots pay their own bills and princesses don't marry paupers. Monica stopped struggling against Jason's grip. She stood up straight, smoothing her tracksuit. Her face was cold now, calculated. Fine, she said. Fine. You want to play dirty, Bernie? We can play dirty. You think you can starve us out? You think we will come crawling back? You are wrong. We don't need you. We have the house on Oak Street. We have our wedding gifts. We will figure this out. And when we do, you will never see us again. You will never see your grandchildren. You will die alone in this rotting house, and no one will care. I smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was genuine. The house on Oak Street, I said. Yes, the house, she snapped. Our house, I looked at my watch. It was 8:15. You might want to head over there, I said. Why? She asked suspiciously. Because at 8:00 this morning a locksmith met the property manager there, I said. They are changing the locks, and since the lease was technically month to month, and under my name, I terminated it. Jason dropped his hands from her waist. He looked like he had been shot. You evicted us, he whispered. I didn't evict you, I said. I just stopped providing housing for people who are not family. You said it yourself, Monica. I am just a bank account and the bank is closed. Monica stared at me. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The magnitude of what was happening was finally crashing down on her. No car, no venue, no limo for her parents, and now no home. Jason backed away from me. He looked at the house he had grown up in. He looked at me, his father, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. The fear of a man who realizes he is standing on a trapdoor and the lever has just been pulled. You are insane, he said. You are actually insane. Go, I said, pointing to the street. Go find your wife's parents. Go explain why they are standing at the airport. Go find a place to sleep tonight. But get off my property. I stepped back inside and closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. My heart was pounding in my chest. It hurt. God, it hurt. To do that to my own boy. To see the hate in his eyes. But then I looked down at my hands. The hands that had built everything, they were trembling. Not from weakness. From rage. From the release of years of being small so he could feel big. I walked to the window and watched them. They were running down the driveway now. Jason was on his phone, probably trying to call an Uber that he couldn't pay for. Monica was screaming at him, hitting his arm. They looked like rats on a sinking ship, turning on each other as the water rose. I watched them until they turned the corner and disappeared. I was alone in my house. It was quiet, but it was a clean quiet. The air felt lighter. I went back to the kitchen. I picked up the shoe polish again. I still had one shoe left to shine. I wasn't going to the wedding, but that didn't mean I couldn't have nice shoes. A man has to be ready, because I knew this wasn't over. They would go to the Oak Street house. They would find the locks changed, and then they would realize that the paintings on the walls, the paintings my wife Catherine had painted, were gone, and that is when the real war would start. I dipped the rag in the wax. Circular motions, patience, focus. I was just getting started. I drove to the house on Oak Street. It was a 20-minute drive from my place past the strip malls and the new developments that had sprung up over the cornfields I used to play in as a boy. I parked my truck across the street. The house looked good. I had resided it myself 3 years ago, choosing a slate blue vinyl that was expensive but lasted forever. The lawn was green. The windows were clean. It was a perfect starter home, a home most young couples would kill for, and I had given it to them for the price of a studio apartment. I saw them before I even turned the engine off. They were standing on the front porch. Monica was banging on the door, but with the flat of her hand screaming at the wood as if it could hear her. Jason was pacing back and forth on the walkway, his hands in his hair, looking like a man who had just watched his house burn down. They hadn't gone to the airport. They hadn't gone to a hotel. They had come here, hoping I was bluffing, hoping that the key in Jason's pocket would still turn the tumbler. It didn't. Sullivan is a good property manager. When he says 8, he means 8. I stepped out of the truck. I didn't slam the door. I just pushed it shut until it clicked. The sound made Jason look up. When he saw me, his face changed. The fear I had seen earlier was gone, replaced by a raw, ugly fury. He didn't see his father, he saw the enemy. He saw the man standing between him and the life he felt he was owed. He started running toward me. He didn't scream. He didn't shout. He just lowered his head and charged. I had seen that look before in bar fights and disagreements on job sites when the money ran out. It was the look of a man who has lost control and wants to hurt something just to prove he still exists. I stood my ground. I didn't flinch. I reached into the bed of my truck. My hand closed around the cold rubber grip of a pair of long-handled pruning shears. I had thrown them in there yesterday after trimming the hedges at one of my rental properties. They were heavy, solid steel with blades sharp enough to take a finger off without slowing down. I pulled them out and held them at my side. I didn't raise them like a weapon. I just held them like a tool I knew how to use. Jason crossed the street. He didn't slow down. He was going to hit me. My own son was going to tackle me onto the asphalt. I took one step forward and snapped the blades of the shears together. Clack. The sound was sharp and metallic, cutting through the morning air like a gunshot. Jason skidded to a halt 6 feet away from me. He stared at the shears. Then he looked up at my face. I wasn't smiling. I wasn't angry. I was cold. I looked at him with the eyes of a foreman who catches a worker stealing copper wire. I looked at him with the eyes of a man who has fired people bigger and meaner than him. "Don't," I said. My voice was low, barely a whisper, but he heard it. "Do not take another step, Jason." He stood there, chest heaving, fists clenched at his sides. "You locked us out," he choked out, saliva flying from his lips. "All our stuff is in there. My suit, Monica's dress for the reception, our passports, everything. You can't do this. It is illegal." "It is not illegal," I said calmly. "It is a lockout for non-payment of market value rent and lease violation. Sullivan posted the notice on the door. Didn't you read it?" "I don't care about the notice," he screamed, stepping forward again. "Open the door, Dad. Open the damn door, or I swear to God I will." He raised a fist. I lifted the shears. I pointed the blades right at his chest. I didn't shake. My arm was steady as a rock. "You will what, Jason?" I asked. "You will hit me? You will beat up the old man? Go ahead. Try it. But remember who taught you how to fight. And remember that I spent 40 years breaking concrete while you were playing video games." He froze. He looked at the blades, then at my eyes. He saw something there he had never seen before. He saw that the safety net was gone. He saw that I wasn't his dad anymore. I was just another man, and in a fight between men he knew he would lose. The rage drained out of him, leaving him hollow. He took a step back, his hands shaking. "You are crazy," he whispered. "You are actually threatening me." "I am not threatening you," I said, lowering the shears but keeping them ready. "I am protecting myself. There is a difference." Monica came running down the lawn, her heels sinking into the grass I paid to have fertilized. She grabbed Jason's arm, pulling him back. "Jason, stop!" she cried, looking at me with genuine he has lost his mind. "Look at him. He has a weapon. Let's go. We have to go. We can call the police later. We have to get to the venue. My parents are probably there by now. We have to salvage this." She was right. The clock was ticking. Every minute they wasted arguing with me was a minute closer to their social funeral. I watched them retreat. They backed away toward the sidewalk like I was a rabid dog. "Listen to me," I called out. My voice carried down the street. "I am giving you 24 hours. They stopped and looked back. 24 hours, I repeated. "Sullivan will be here tomorrow at noon. He will open the door for exactly 60 minutes. You can take your clothes and your personal items. Anything left after that goes to the dump." "So, but the furniture," Monica wailed. "The TV, the wedding gifts." "The furniture is mine," I said. "I bought it. The TV is mine. I bought it. The gifts. Well, you can take the gifts. You are going to need them to return for cash when you realize you have nowhere to sleep." I took a step toward them and they flinched. "Now get out of here," I said. "Get off my street. Go play pretend with your rich in-laws. Go see how far that gets you." Jason looked at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes, only hate, pure, unadulterated hate. And that was fine. I could live with hate. I couldn't live with disrespect. "Come on, Monica," he said, grabbing her hand. "Let's go. We will fix this. We don't need him." They turned and ran down the street toward the main road, probably hoping to flag down a taxi or find a spot with cell service to call a ride they couldn't afford. I watched them go. I stood there in the street, holding the pruning shears, feeling the weight of the steel in my hand. A neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, peered out from behind her curtains across the street. I nodded at her. She let the curtain fall back. I walked up the driveway to the house. I walked up to the front door. I looked at the notice Sullivan had taped there. Notice of lease termination. It looked official. It looked final. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the master key. I didn't need to wait for Sullivan. I owned the place. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air in the house was stale. It smelled of expensive candles and neglect. There were clothes thrown everywhere. Pizza boxes on the coffee table. It looked like a frat house, not a home for a married couple. I walked through the living room. I didn't look at the mess. I looked at the walls. They were empty spaces, rectangular patches of paint that were slightly brighter than the rest of the wall. I stopped. My heart skipped a beat. I walked to the hallway, more empty spaces. I walked to the bedroom. Above the bed where I had hung it myself 3 years ago, there should have been a painting. A landscape of the lake cabin we used to rent. Catherine had painted it the summer before she got sick. It wasn't a masterpiece to the world, but it was a masterpiece to me. It was her soul on canvas. It was gone. I looked around the room frantically. The other painting, the one of the flowers, gone. The sketch of Jason as a boy, gone. I ran to the jewelry box on the dresser. It was open, empty. Catherine's pearl necklace, the one I gave her for our 30th anniversary, gone. My blood ran cold. Then it boiled. They hadn't just been living off me. They had been selling me piece by piece. I looked down at the floor. Half hidden under the bed was a piece of paper. I picked it up. It was a receipt, yellow carbon paper, downtown pawn and gold. Items, 3 oil paintings, amateur, 1 pearl necklace, 1 gold watch, total cash payout $200. I stared at the number, $22. They had sold my wife's legacy. They had sold the only things I had left of her for $200, probably to upgrade the flowers or get a better DJ. The sadness evaporated. The hesitation evaporated. This wasn't about a wedding anymore. This wasn't about disrespect. This was a crime. I took my phone out. I dialed Sullivan. "Bernie," he answered. "I changed the locks. They are out." "I know, Sullivan," I said. My voice was shaking, but not from fear. "I am in the house, Sullivan. I need you to do something for me. And I need you to do it fast." "What is it, Bernie?" "Draft a criminal complaint," I said. "Theft. Grand larceny." "Bernie, are you sure it's your son?" I looked at the empty spot on the wall where Catherine's painting used to be. I touched the wall. It was cold. "He isn't my son right now, Sullivan," I said. "He is a thief. Prepare the papers and call the police. Tell them to meet me at the Grand Plaza." "You are going to the wedding?" Sullivan asked. "Yes," I said. "I am going to the wedding. I have to deliver a gift." I hung up. I put the receipt in my pocket. I walked out of the house and locked the door. I got into my truck. I had work to do. I pulled my truck up to the curb in front of the house on Oak Street and killed the engine. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the kind of quiet that usually comes before a storm breaks. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, looking at the house. It was a good house, a solid house. I had bought it as a foreclosure 3 years ago and spent 6 months restoring it with my own hands. I sanded the floors. I hung the drywall. I installed the new windows. It was supposed to be a gift, a stepping stone for Jason and Monica to build a life. Now it looked like a fortress that had been barred against me. I stepped out of the truck and walked up the driveway. The concrete was stained with oil leaks that Jason had never bothered to clean up. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my key ring. I selected the brass key that opened the front door, the master key that I had kept for emergencies. I slid it into the lock. It went in halfway and stopped. I jiggled it. I tried to force it. It hit a wall of metal. They had changed the locks. I stood there on the porch staring at the deadbolt. A low chuckle escaped my throat, but there was no humor in it. It was a sound of pure disbelief. They lived in my house rent-free. They drove my cars. They spent my money. And their response to a disagreement was to change the locks on a property they did not own. It was a level of audacity that I almost had to admire. They truly believed that possession was 9/10 of the law. They truly believed that if they kept me out, they could keep their fantasy alive. I took out my phone. I didn't call Jason. I didn't call Monica. There was no point in screaming through a locked door. Instead, I scrolled down to a number I had not used in a while. Mike the locksmith answered on the second ring. "Bernie," he said, "what can I do for you?" "I need you at Oak Street, Mike," I said. "Bring the drill. And bring a new set of deadbolts, the heavy-duty ones." I waited on the porch. I didn't pace. I didn't look through the windows. I just stood there like a sentry. Neighbors drove by, slowing down as they saw me standing guard in my work clothes. I didn't wave. I wasn't in the mood for neighborly pleasantries. I was in the mood for access. Mike arrived in 15 minutes. He was a big man who had been cracking safes and picking locks in this town for 30 years. He took one look at me and then one look at the door, and he didn't ask a single question. He knew who owned the deed. He knew who paid the bills. "Lost your keys, Bernie?" he asked, pulling a heavy drill from his van. "Something like that," I said. "The tenants decided to make some unauthorized modifications. I need to inspect the property." Mike nodded. He stepped up to the door. The sound of the drill biting into the metal was loud and violent. It shrieked as it bored through the pins of the lock Jason had probably paid a fortune to have installed just hours ago. Metal shavings curled onto the welcome mat. It took less than 2 minutes. With a final crunch, the lock gave way. Mike used a screwdriver to turn the mechanism and the door swung open. "Thanks, Mike," I said, handing him a wad of cash. "Install the new ones and give me the only set of keys." I stepped across the threshold. The smell hit me first. It was a thick, cloying mixture of stale champagne, expensive perfume, and old garbage. It smelled like a party that had gone on for too long and ended badly. The blinds were drawn, casting the living room in a dim, dusty twilight. I reached out and flipped the light switch. The devastation was absolute. It wasn't that the house had been destroyed in a fit of rage. It was that it had been treated with a casual, ongoing disrespect that was somehow worse. There were clothes everywhere. Designer jackets thrown over the backs of chairs. Silk dresses pooled on the floor like puddles of oil. Wool shoe boxes were stacked in towers that leaned precariously against the walls. Takeout containers littered the coffee table, some of them buzzing with flies. I walked further into the room, my boots crunching on something hard. I looked down. It was a crystal flute shattered into pieces. I stepped over it. This was how they lived. This was the reality behind the Instagram photos, and the high society pretension. They lived like squatters in a palace. They treated my property the same way they treated me, with total indifference to its value. I walked into the kitchen. The sink was overflowing with dishes. A bottle of Dom Perignon sat on the counter uncorked and half full, going flat in the heat. I looked at the granite countertops I had installed. There were ring marks and stains. I looked at the cabinets. One of the doors was hanging off its hinges. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest. This wasn't just messy, this was ungrateful. Every stain, every scratch, every piece of trash was a testament to how little they cared about the work I had done for them. But then I noticed something else, something that made the mess seem insignificant. I walked back into the living room. I looked at the walls. When I had given them the house, I had left a few things. Furniture, mostly, but also art. My wife, Catherine, had been a painter. She wasn't professional, but she had a way of capturing light that made the world feel softer. She had painted landscapes of the places we had visited, the lakes, the mountains, the quiet corners of the world where we had been happy. I looked at the spot above the fireplace. There was a large rectangular patch of paint that was cleaner and brighter than the rest of the wall. The painting of the lighthouse in Maine was gone. I spun around. I looked at the wall by the hallway, the painting of the wildflower field, gone. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. It wasn't the frantic beat of panic. It was the heavy thud of dread. I ran down the hallway, kicking aside a pile of laundry. I burst into the master bedroom. The bed was unmade, a tangle of expensive sheets. Many suitcases were open on the floor, half packed as if they had been interrupted. But I didn't care about that. I looked at the wall above the dresser, Catherine's self-portrait, the one she had painted for me on our 25th anniversary, the one where she was smiling that secret smile she only gave to me. It was gone. I stood there in the center of the room, spinning slowly in a circle. The walls were bare. Every single piece of art, every single reminder of my wife was missing. The hooks were still there, naked and accusing. I rushed to the closet. I threw open the doors. I pulled out the drawers of the jewelry cabinet I had built into the wall. It was empty. Catherine's pearl necklace, her diamond earrings, the gold watch I had given her when Jason was born. All of it gone. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt thin. They hadn't just lived off me. They hadn't just disrespected me. They had looted me. They had taken the only pieces of Catherine I had left, the pieces I had trusted them to safeguard, and they had removed them. Why? Why would they take the paintings? They weren't famous. They weren't worth millions on the open market. They were sentimental. They were family history. Unless they needed money fast. Unless they needed cash to pay for the flowers and the limo and the champagne tower at the wedding I wasn't invited to. I fell to my knees. I began to tear through the room. I ripped the sheets off the bed. I dumped the contents of the suitcases onto the floor. I was looking for something, anything, that would tell me where they were. I checked the nightstand drawers, empty except for loose change and receipts. Receipts. I grabbed a handful of papers from the trash can next to the bed. I smoothed them out. Pizza, dry cleaning, a parking ticket. And then I saw it. A yellow slip of carbon paper crumpled into a ball and discarded as if it meant nothing. I unfolded it. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely read the text. The logo at the top was a pair of scales. Downtown Pawn and Loan. I read the itemized list. Item 1, oil painting coastal landscape. Item 2, oil painting floral study. Item 3, oil painting portrait. Item 4, vintage pearl necklace. Item 5, gold ladies watch. I looked at the total payout, flat $200. They had sold my wife's soul. They had sold 40 years of memories. They had sold the legacy of a woman who had loved Jason more than life itself. And they had sold it all for $200. Probably to pay for the appetizers or the upgrade to the bridal suite. I sat there on the floor clutching the yellow slip of paper. The rage that had been burning inside me turned into something else. It turned into ice. It turned into a resolve so cold and so hard that it frightened me. This was no longer a dispute between a father and a son. Guy clears throat. This was no longer about a wedding invitation or a bank account. This was a crime. I stood up. I put the receipt in my pocket. I looked around the room one last time. I looked at the empty walls. I didn't see my son's bedroom anymore. I saw a crime scene. I walked out of the room. I walked down the hallway. I walked past the locksmith who was finishing up the installation of the new deadbolt. "Lock it up, Mike," I said. My voice was steady. "Lock it all up. Nobody gets in here. Not even if they beg." I walked out to my truck. I took out my phone. I dialed a number. Sullivan answered on the first ring. "Bernie, did you get in?" he asked. "I got in," I said. "Sullivan, I need you to do something for me, and I need you to show it right now." "What is it?" "Bernie, I am holding a receipt from a pawn shop," I said. "Jason stole his mother's jewelry. He stole her paintings.